Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to World Wrestlers History, where we celebrate the lives and legacies of the greatest wrestlers of all time. Today, we begin a very special journey into the story of one of the most beloved superstars the wrestling world has ever known. This is the story of Latino Heat, Eddie Guerrero. In this first part of his history, we will walk through his origins, his family legacy, his early struggles, his rise through Mexico and Japan, and his groundbreaking time in WCW. By the end of this episode, you will understand why Eddie's passion, charisma, and talent made him unforgettable even before his WWE glory days. Eddie Guerrero was born on October 9, 1967, in El Paso, Texas, into one of the most legendary wrestling families in the history of the sport. His father, Guerrero, was not just a wrestler, but a pioneer in lucha libre who introduced new styles and helped shape Mexican wrestling. Eddie grew up in an environment where wrestling wasn't just a career choice, it was part of daily life, an inheritance passed down like a sacred tradition. With four older brothers, Chavo, Mando, Hector, and Chavo Jr.'s father, Chavo Sr., already making names for themselves in the ring, Eddie had role models surrounding him from a young age. The Guerrero family lived and breathed wrestling, and little Eddie dreamed of one day standing shoulder to shoulder with his father and brothers, carrying the family name to even greater heights. Growing up in El Paso, Eddie was small in stature compared to many of his peers, but his heart and determination were impossible to ignore. He began training in wrestling as soon as he could, learning not only the athleticism required but also the artistry and storytelling that separated good wrestlers from great ones. His natural charisma and ability to connect with an audience were apparent early on. In high school, he excelled as an amateur wrestler, sharpening the technical base that would later define his professional career. But while Eddie's foundation was being built in Texas, his ambition stretched far beyond the borders of his hometown. Eddie's journey to becoming a professional wrestler took him first to Mexico, where he followed in the footsteps of his father. Competing under the mask and identity of Máscara Mágica, for a time, Eddie quickly made a name for himself in Mexico's lucha libre scene. But soon, he dropped the mask, believing his real personality and natural charisma would shine brighter without it. His time in Mexico was both a proving ground and a classroom, where he mastered the high-flying lucha style that thrilled crowds with speed, agility, and daring risk-taking. At the same time, Eddie absorbed lessons about ring psychology, timing, and storytelling, the subtler elements that would later make him one of the most complete performers in the world. Eddie's talents could not be contained to Mexico alone. He traveled to Japan, where he honed his craft against some of the most technically skilled wrestlers in the world. In New Japan Pro Wrestling, he wrestled under the persona of Black Tiger II, a masked villain meant to rival the beloved Tiger Mask. This was a critical stage in Eddie's development. Wrestling in Japan forced him to adapt his style, mixing lucha libre high-flying with Japanese strong style, which emphasized stiff strikes, grappling, and endurance. It was here that Eddie truly became an international wrestler, blending influences from around the globe into a unique and versatile style that few could match. His performances in Japan and Mexico did not go unnoticed. By the early 1990s, Eddie Guerrero was already being recognized as one of the best young talents in the world, and his path led him to the United States, where the wrestling landscape was dominated by WCW and WWF. Eddie's break came when he signed with WCW in 1995, joining a wave of international and technically gifted wrestlers who would redefine American wrestling during the decade. WCW's cruiserweight division became a showcase for smaller but incredibly skilled performers, and Eddie was right at the heart of it. The WCW years were a mix of triumph and challenge for Eddie. On one hand, he had the chance to compete with some of the best wrestlers in the world on a major stage. Fans who tuned into WCW Monday Nitro saw Eddie Guerrero deliver matches that were fast-paced, crisp, and filled with athleticism. His battles with Rey Mysterio, Dean Malenko, Chris Jericho, and others are still remembered as some of the greatest technical and high-flying matches of the 1990s. Eddie's rivalry with Rey Mysterio, in particular, became legendary. Their match at Halloween Havoc 1997 is often cited as one of the best cruiserweight matches ever, a perfect blend of lucha libre innovation and American storytelling. Eddie's style was unique because he wasn't just a high flyer, and he wasn't just a technician. He was both, and he could shift between those roles seamlessly depending on the story of the match. He could dive through the ropes with breathtaking speed one moment and tie his opponent in a knot with a technical hold the next. And beyond his athletic gifts, Eddie had the charisma to engage the crowd. Whether he was fighting as a hero or a villain, people couldn't take their eyes off him. WCW wasn't without struggle. While the cruiserweight division gave him opportunities to showcase his skills, WCW was a company heavily dominated by larger-than-life heavyweights, and smaller wrestlers like Eddie often found themselves overlooked when it came to main event storylines. Still, Eddie refused to let that diminish his spirit. He continued to pour his heart into every match, building a loyal fanbase that respected him not only for his talent but also for his authenticity. Eddie's determination to stand out in WCW led him to experiment with his character as well. At times, he leaned into a more serious, intense persona, frustrated by the lack of recognition. At other times, he allowed glimpses of the humor and mischief that would later define his lie, cheat, and steal character. He also became part of the Latino World Order, LWO, a faction created to give Latino wrestlers more visibility in WCW. While the LWO never reached the heights of other factions like the NWO, it was a significant step in highlighting Eddie's leadership and his desire to represent his culture proudly. Despite his growing success, Eddie also faced personal challenges during this time. The pressures of the wrestling business, combined with injuries and the grind of constant travel, began to take a toll. Eddie battled inner demons that would resurface later in his career, struggles that made his eventual triumphs all the more meaningful. Still, in WCW, Eddie Guerrero proved without a doubt that he was one of the best wrestlers in the world, even if the company never pushed him to the very top. By the late 1990s, Eddie's frustration with WCW was growing. Alongside other technically skilled wrestlers like Chris Benoit, Dean Malenko, and Perry Saturn, he felt that his opportunities were limited and his true potential was being wasted. This set the stage for a dramatic career shift that would change Eddie's life forever. Together with Benoit, Malenko, and Saturn, Eddie made the bold decision to leave WCW and jump to the WWF, now WWE. This group would become known as the Radicals, and their arrival in early 2000 marked the next chapter in Eddie's journey, a chapter that would bring him closer than ever to wrestling greatness. And so, as we close the first episode of Eddie Guerrero's history, we leave him at a pivotal moment. From his childhood in El Paso, to his lucha roots in Mexico, to his growth in Japan, and his showcase in WCW, Eddie had already proven himself as one of the most talented and versatile wrestlers alive. Yet, despite his brilliance, he had not yet reached the level of recognition and success he truly deserved. That recognition was waiting for him in WWE, where Latino heat would rise to unforgettable heights. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the early life and career of Eddie Guerrero. In our next episode, we will explore his legendary time in WWE, from the Radicals' debut to his lie, cheat, steal persona, his World Championship triumph, and the lasting legacy he left behind. This has been World Wrestlers History, and we will see you in episode 2 as we continue the incredible story of Eddie Guerrero. Viva la Raza!